Corrupt judge insults Karoline Leavitt in court. Minutes later, he's in handcuffs. In the bustling political landscape of 2025, Karoline Leavitt stands as a striking figure, a 27-year-old firebrand who's carved her name into history as the youngest White House press secretary ever, serving under President Donald Trump's second term. Known for her razor-sharp wit and unflinching resolve, she's become a lightning rod in a deeply divided nation, unafraid to lock horns with political adversaries who underestimate her youth. Today, March 20, 2025, she steps out of the gleaming White House corridors and into a storm brewing far from Washington. A federal courtroom in Boston where the stakes couldn't be higher. The case revolves around the Future Generations Alliance, or FGA, a nonprofit she's championed publicly for its mission to support education and family values across America. Accused of laundering money through shadowy donor networks, the organization faces a relentless legal assault, and Karoline has volunteered to testify in its defense, armed with evidence she claims will dismantle the prosecution's narrative. The air outside the courthouse hums with anticipation as reporters jostle for position, their cameras flashing like strobe lights, capturing her determined stride up the stone steps. Inside, the wooden benches are packed with spectators, some supporters of FGA clutching signs, others skeptics, drawn by the promise of a showdown. Karoline adjusts her navy blazer, her expression calm but her hazel eyes glinting with purpose, ready to face whatever awaits beyond those heavy oak doors. This isn't just another press briefing, it's a battleground where her reputation, and the fate of an organization she believes in, hang in the balance. As the murmurs of the crowd settle, a hush falls over the room with the arrival of Judge Leonard Grayson, a towering figure at 62, whose presence commands attention the moment he sweeps into the courtroom. Clad in his black robe, he moves with the deliberate gait of a man who's spent decades wielding authority, his silver hair swept back and his jaws set in a perpetual scowl. Grayson's no stranger to controversy. His tenure as a federal judge has been marked by a fierce anti-Trump stance, earning him praise from liberal circles and scorn from conservatives who've felt the sting of his unyielding rulings. Whispers have long circulated about his ties to powerful donors, though nothing concrete has ever stuck to his polished reputation. Today, he's presiding over the FGA case, and the tension in the room thickens as he ascends the bench, his dark eyes scanning the scene with thinly veiled disdain. Before the clerk can even finish her opening formalities, Grayson's voice cuts through the air like a whip. "No water bottles in my courtroom. Remove them now." The young clerk fumbles, startled by the abrupt command, scurrying to enforce his edict as a few spectators reluctantly ditch their drinks. It's a small gesture, but it speaks volumes about Grayson's need for control, a trait that's made him a formidable figure, and to some, a dangerous one. He leans back in his chair, fingers drumming impatiently on the desk, clearly in no mood for delays, as he prepares to dissect the case before him. The atmosphere shifts palpably when Karoline Leavitt enters the witness area, her heels clicking against the polished floor, a subtle but confident sound that draws every eye in the room. She carries a slim stack of documents in one hand and a USB drive in the other, her posture straight despite the weight of scrutiny bearing down on her. Judge Grayson's gaze locks onto her instantly, his lips curling into a sneer as he leans forward, resting his elbows on the bench. "Well, well, if it isn't the White House's golden girl," he drawls, his tone dripping with mockery. "This isn't your press room, Miss Leavitt. Don't expect me to clap for your little performance." The jab hangs in the air, sharp and deliberate, meant to rattle her before she's even begun. A ripple of whispers spreads through the gallery. Some spectators shift uncomfortably. Others smirk at the judge's audacity, but Karoline doesn't flinch. She meets his stare head-on, her lips curving into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "I'm not here to perform, Your Honor," she replies, her voice steady and clear, cutting through the tension like a blade. "I'm here for the truth. Something this court deserves to hear." Grayson's eyes narrow, and for a moment his fingers pause their restless tapping, caught off guard by her composure. Then he lets out a dry, humorless chuckle, leaning back with exaggerated nonchalance. "The truth, huh? Spare me the sermon, you Gen Z brat. You wouldn't know the law if it bit you." His words land like a gauntlet thrown down, a challenge laced with contempt. The room buzzes again, a man in the back muttering, She's not backing down, while a woman nearby stifles a laugh, clearly amused by Karoline's defiance. The clerk glances nervously between them, clutching her notepad as if bracing for impact. Karoline sets her documents on the stand, her movements deliberate, her gaze unwavering despite the judge's venom. The air grows heavy, charged with the promise of a clash that's only just beginning, as spectators lean forward, sensing the spark of something explosive about to ignite. This isn't just a trial anymore. It's a showdown, and Karoline Leavitt has no intention of playing by Grayson's rules. So what do you think Karoline will do to tackle a smug judge like Grayson? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button if you're pumped for the drama that's coming next. The Boston courtroom, already thick with anticipation from Karoline Leavitt's bold entrance, tightens like a coiled spring as Judge Leonard Grayson leans forward, his steely gaze fixed on the young White House press secretary standing before him. The faint hum of whispers from the packed gallery fades as he slams his palm against the polished oak desk, the sharp crack reverberating through the room like a gunshot. "Keep it brief, Miss Leavitt," he snaps, his voice a low growl edged with irritation. "I've got no patience for your conservative fairy tales. Start talking or sit down." Before she can even finish her opening sentence, something about the Future Generations Alliance's commitment to transparency, he cuts her off mid-breath, his hand slicing through the air. "Enough with the preamble. I don't need a speech. I need facts, if you even have any." His tone drips with condescension, a clear attempt to throw her off balance, and he shoots a glance at the clerk, a mousy young woman hunched over her notepad. "Make a note. The witness is wasting the court's time and showing blatant disrespect," he orders, his lips curling into a smug half-smile, as if he's already won. The clerk's pen trembles slightly as she scribbles, her eyes darting nervously between the judge and Karoline. But Karoline doesn't waver. She straightens her shoulders, her navy blazer still crisp despite the charged atmosphere, and fixes Grayson with a steady, unflinching stare. "I have every right to present evidence, Your Honor," she says, her voice calm but firm, slicing through his bluster like a quiet blade. "That is, unless you're afraid of what it might show." The words land with precision, a subtle dare that hangs in the air, and for a split second, Grayson's smug facade falters. His fingers twitch on the desk, his jaw tightening as the gallery murmurs grow louder, a mix of surprise and amusement rippling through the crowd. A man in a gray suit near the back leans over to his neighbor, muttering, "She's not here to play," while Grayson's eyes narrow, his control over the room teetering as Karoline refuses to bend. Undeterred by the judge's interruptions, Karoline steps forward with purpose, her heels clicking softly against the floor as she reaches for the courtroom's projector system, a sleek setup tucked beside the witness stand. She slides her USB drive into the port with a practiced ease, and the screen behind her flickers to life, casting a pale glow across the room. "If facts are what you want, Your Honor, here they are," she says, her tone even but laced with confidence as she pulls up a series of bank statements, crisp black and white records detailing the financial dealings of the Future Generations Alliance. The documents scroll across the screen, each line item meticulously dated and sourced, showing donations flowing in and out with clear public records attached. "These prove FGA's transactions are above board. Every dollar accounted for," she explains, her voice rising slightly to carry over the rustling of the audience. Grayson leans back in his chair, crossing his arms with a dismissive snort, his silver hair catching the light as he tilts his head. "Those papers don't mean a damn thing," he retorts, his lips twisting into a smirk. "Anyone with a printer in 5 minutes can whip up a forgery. Try harder, Miss Leavitt." His casual rejection sends a ripple of tension through the room, the prosecution team exchanging smug nods, while FGA supporters in the gallery shift uncomfortably. But Karoline doesn't blink. She taps the USB again, pulling up a new file. "If you doubt the paperwork, Your Honor, maybe this will convince you," she says, her voice sharpening as she clicks play on a video. The screen shifts to grainy but clear footage of an FGA board meeting held in a modest conference room in Worcester last month, March 2025, where leaders sit around a table openly discussing donor contributions, with notepads and laptops in view. One executive, a middle-aged woman with glasses, says plainly, "All funds are logged and reported. Nothing hidden here." The audio is crisp, the intent unmistakable, and Karoline lets it run for a full minute before pausing it, turning back to Grayson. "This was recorded legally with consent, and it backs up every number on those statements," she declares, her eyes locking onto his. The room buzzes again, a woman in the front row whispering, "That's solid," as Grayson's smirk fades, replaced by a flicker of unease he quickly masks with a scoff. But Grayson's patience, already threadbare, snaps like a brittle twig as Karoline stands tall, her evidence hanging in the air like a challenge he can't ignore. He shoots up from his chair, his robe billowing slightly as he looms over the bench, his face flushing a deep crimson that clashes with his silver hair. "Who the hell do you think you are? Coming in here to lecture me about the law?" he roars, his voice booming through the courtroom, loud enough to make the clerk jump in her seat. "You're nothing but an empty mouthpiece, a little girl playing dress-up in a world you don't understand." The insult cuts deep, raw and personal, and the room erupts into chaos. Gasps and murmurs colliding as spectators lean forward, wide-eyed. Then, in a move that stuns even the most jaded onlookers, Grayson snatches the plastic water cup from his desk, the only one he'd allowed himself after banning everyone else's, and hurls it across the space between them. It spins through the air, a clumsy missile, and strikes Karoline's shoulder, water splashing across her blazer and dripping down her cheek. The cup clatters to the floor, rolling under the witness stand as the gallery explodes, a man shouting, "What the hell?" while others craned their necks to see her reaction. Karoline freezes for a heartbeat, water glistening on her skin, then slowly raises a hand to wipe her face, her movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. She looks up at Grayson, her hazel eyes burning with a quiet fury that silences the room more effectively than any gavel could. "This," she says, her voice low but piercing, "only proves you're scared of the truth, Your Honor." The words hit like a thunderclap, and Grayson's face twists, caught between rage and something uglier, panic perhaps, as he sinks back into his chair, breathing heavily. A court officer, a wiry man in a gray uniform, rushes over, stammering an apology. "I'm so sorry, ma'am, that shouldn't have happened." But Grayson waves him off with a snarl, "Get back to your post." The officer retreats, flustered, while the audience buzz, a woman in a red coat whispering, "He's losing it," as Karoline brushes water from her sleeve, her resolve unshaken. The line has been crossed, and the courtroom teeters on the edge of something volatile. Every eye now locked on the unflappable young woman and the judge, who's just revealed more than he intended. So, do you think Grayson tossing that water cup is a sign he's about to crack? What would you do if you were in Karoline's shoes right now? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take. The Boston courtroom, still reeling from Judge Leonard Grayson's outburst, his water cup now a sodden memory on the floor, falls into a taut silence as Karoline Leavitt brushes the last droplets from her blazer, her hazel eyes locked on the judge with an intensity that seems to pin him to his chair. The air crackles with expectation. The gallery's murmurs hushed as she steps closer to the projector, her movements deliberate, almost predatory. "Your Honor," she begins, her voice cutting through the stillness like a sharpened edge. "If you think that little tantrum changes anything, you're mistaken. Let's get to the real evidence." Grayson's face, still flushed from his earlier rage, twitches as she taps the USB drive still plugged into the system, pulling up a new file that sends a faint hum through the speakers. "I'd like the court to hear this," she says, pressing play, and suddenly Grayson's own voice fills the room, low and conspiratorial, crackling slightly from the recording. "FGA has to go down. I need another 200 grand to make sure it happens clean." The words hang heavy, unmistakable, spoken to an unknown figure over a phone line, and the effect is instantaneous. Grayson's eyes widen, his ruddy complexion draining to a sickly pallor as he lurches forward, slamming both hands on the desk with a force that rattles the wood. "That's a fake!" he bellows, his voice hoarse and frantic, spittle flying as he points a trembling finger at Karoline. "You dare slander me with this garbage? I'll have you disbarred, thrown out." The gallery erupts into whispers, a woman in a green scarf gasping audibly while a man scribbles furiously on a notepad. But Karoline doesn't flinch. She slides a single sheet from her slim stack of documents onto the projector, the screen flashing with a Swiss bank statement, its numbers stark and damning. "This isn't slander, Your Honor," she says, her tone icy and precise. "It's a transaction. $200,000 deposited into your account in Zurich, dated last Tuesday. The day after you refuse to review FGA's financial disclosures in pre-trial, the room tilts into chaos, spectators leaning forward as Grayson's breathing grows ragged, his hands gripping the desk's edge like a lifeline. "Lies!" he roars, but his voice cracks, and Karoline's faint smile, cool, unshaken, only deepens the wound. Her evidence, a blade he can't deflect. As the weight of Karoline's revelation settles, the courtroom's tension snaps like a taut wire with the sudden sound of a chair scraping back in the gallery. Heads turn as a young woman rises from the third row, her hands trembling but her posture resolute. Emily Hart, 29, a former assistant to Grayson, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, her eyes red-rimmed but blazing with defiance. "I recorded that call," she declares, her voice quavering at first but gaining strength as she steps into the aisle, clutching a small black hard drive like a talisman. "I worked for him for 3 years, and I couldn't stay silent anymore. He forced me to bury FGA's data, told me to wipe their donor logs or I'd lose everything." The room explodes into gasps and murmurs, a man in a plaid shirt muttering "holy hell" as Emily's words ricochet off the walls. Tears spill down her cheeks, but she presses on, her voice breaking with emotion. "He said it was for the greater good, but it was about money. A group called the Horizon Collective paid him to twist cases, and FGA wasn't the first." She holds up the hard drive, her hands shaking as she steps toward the clerk's desk. "This has everything I saved. Emails, payments, orders to skew dozens of rulings against anyone who didn't fit his agenda." Grayson's face contorts, a mask of fury and betrayal, and he lunges halfway over the bench, his robe flapping as he screams, "You treacherous idiot! You think you can ruin me?" His voice cracks into a shrill pitch, and Emily flinches but stands her ground, tears streaming as she hands the drive to the stunned clerk, who takes it with trembling fingers. The gallery buzzes louder, a woman shouting, "She's got guts!" while others crane their necks, phones discreetly raised to capture the unraveling scene. Karoline watches in silence, her expression softening for a moment as she nods at Emily, a flicker of gratitude, before turning back to Grayson, whose wild eyes dart between the two women, his control slipping through his fingers like sand. The clerk clutches the drive, her notepad forgotten, as the room braces for what comes next, the air thick with the scent of impending collapse. Grayson's unraveling reaches a fever pitch as Emily's confession hangs in the air, the hard drive now a ticking bomb on the clerk's desk. His breathing turns erratic, chest heaving beneath his robe as he staggers back then forward again, his silver hair disheveled from running a frantic hand through it. "You've got nothing," he snarls, his voice a desperate rasp, and in a blur of motion he vaults over the bench, a shocking breach of decorum, landing awkwardly on the floor with a thud that draws a collective gasp from the gallery. He scrambles toward the clerk, shoving past a stunned court officer, and snatches the hard drive from her grasp, his fingers clawing at the plastic casing. "No evidence, no case," he shouts, a manic grin splitting his face as he raises the device high and smashes it against the hardwood floor. The crack echoes like a gunshot, shards of black plastic skittering across the room as the drive splinters into useless fragments. Grayson straightens, chest heaving, and lets out a triumphant, unhinged laugh. "Gone! It's all gone now. Try proving anything without that." The gallery freezes, spectators gaping in disbelief. A man in the back row whispers, "He's lost it," while a woman covers her mouth, eyes wide. The clerk recoils, pressing herself against her chair as if expecting an explosion, and the court officer hesitates, unsure whether to intervene. But Karoline steps forward, her soaked blazer clinging to her frame, and her voice cuts through the chaos with a calm that chills the room to its core. "Nice try, Your Honor," she says, her faint smile returning, sharp and unyielding. "But I sent digital copies of everything on that drive to the FBI this morning. Your little stunt just dug your hole deeper." The laughter dies in Grayson's throat, his face collapsing into a mask of horror as her words sink in. The gallery falls deathly silent, the weight of her revelation pressing down like a physical force. Spectators exchange stunned glances, a woman in a blue jacket murmuring, "She played him," as Grayson stumbles back, clutching the bench for support, his knuckles white. His eyes dart wildly, searching for an escape that doesn't exist, while Karoline stands motionless, her gaze a quiet verdict. The room holds its breath, the wreckage of the hard drive scattered at his feet a symbol of his self-inflicted ruin, as the realization dawns that his secrets are no longer his to bury. "So, were you shocked when Emily stood up to expose Grayson? How much do you think Karoline planned ahead to take him down? Share your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to hear what you think. The Boston courtroom, still frozen in the aftermath of Judge Leonard Grayson's frenzied destruction of Emily Hart's hard drive, trembles with a new energy as the heavy oak doors at the back swing open with a resounding thud, cutting through the stunned silence like a thunderclap. 3 figures stride in, their dark suits crisp against the muted tones of the room, badges glinting under the fluorescent lights. FBI agents, led by a tall, broad-shouldered man with a stern jaw and piercing blue eyes, Special Agent Ryan Cole. His voice booms across the space, authoritative and unyielding, as he steps forward, a warrant clutched in his hand. "Leonard Grayson, you're under arrest for corruption, bribery, and destruction of evidence," he declares, his words landing with the weight of a gavel's final strike. The gallery erupts into a cacophony of gasps and cheers, a man in a denim jacket leaping to his feet with a shout of "Yes!" as Grayson staggers back from the bench, his robe tangled around his legs, his silver hair plastered with sweat. "This is outrageous!" he roars, his voice cracking into a desperate shriek as he flails against the inevitable. "I'm a federal judge. You have no authority over me." But Cole doesn't blink. He nods to his agents, who move with practiced precision, flanking Grayson as he thrashes, his arms swinging wildly in a futile bid to break free. The metallic click of handcuffs echoes through the room, sharp and final, as they snap around his wrists and Grayson's defiance crumbles. His shoulders slump, his head bows, and his eyes, once sharp with arrogance, go vacant, staring at the floor, where shards of the shattered hard drive lie scattered like the ruins of his career. The gallery explodes into applause, a tidal wave of sound washing over the scene, a woman in a gray coat clapping furiously as she yells, "Justice is served," while others join in, their voices blending into a triumphant chorus. Cole grips Grayson's arm, steering him toward the exit, and as the disgraced judge stumbles down the aisle, a man in the back row cups his hands around his mouth and hollers, "About damn time!" The doors close behind them with a heavy thud, sealing Grayson's fate, and the room buzzes with a raw, electric satisfaction, the air thick with the scent of vindication, as all eyes turn to Karoline Leavitt, standing at the center of it all. Her soaked blazer, a badge of her unyielding resolve. As the echoes of Grayson's departure fade, Karoline turns from the witness stand, her gaze softening as it lands on Emily Hart, the young woman still trembling in the aisle, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, tears streaking her pale cheeks. The room quiets slightly, the applause tapering into a hum of anticipation as Karoline steps toward her, her heels clicking softly against the hardwood. "Emily," she says, her voice warm but steady, carrying a depth of gratitude that cuts through the lingering chaos, "thank you for your courage. Because of you, we didn't just save FGA, we gave a voice to everyone Grayson silenced." Emily nods, her lips quivering into a faint smile as she wipes her eyes with the back of her hand, her shoulders easing as if a weight has lifted. "I had to," she whispers, barely audible, but the sincerity in her words resonates, drawing a murmur of approval from the gallery. The moment is interrupted as a new figure ascends the bench. A temporary judge, an older man with a lined face and a no-nonsense demeanor, summoned to restore order. He adjusts his glasses, peering down at the mess of papers and broken plastic before him, then clears his throat. "In light of the evidence presented and the extraordinary circumstances," he announces, his voice gravelly but firm, "all charges against the Future Generations Alliance are dismissed. Ms. Leavitt, the court commends your efforts to uphold the truth." The gallery bursts into cheers again, softer this time, a ripple of relief rather than triumph, and Karoline offers a slight nod, her expression composed but her eyes gleaming with quiet pride. As the session adjourns, she gathers her documents and USB, stepping out into the crisp March air where a swarm of reporters awaits, their microphones thrusting forward like a forest of steel. Cameras flash, illuminating her face as she pauses on the courthouse steps, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "Today proves no one is above the law, not a judge, not anyone. This is a victory for justice, and a warning to those who think they can hide behind power." The crowd roars its approval, a sea of voices chanting her name, and Karoline stands tall, the wind tugging at her damp blazer, a symbol of resilience etched against the gray Boston sky. The day's tumult fades into a gentler scene as Karoline's car pulls away from the courthouse, weaving through the city's narrow streets toward a modest brownstone in a quiet suburb. Inside, the tension of the courtroom melts away as she pushes open the door, the soft creak of hinges greeting her like an old friend. Her husband, a lean man with warm brown eyes and an easy smile, looks up from the living room, where he's bouncing their 8-month-old son on his knee, the baby giggling as he clutches a plush toy. "You're home," he says, his voice thick with pride as he sets the child down and crosses the room to pull her into a tight embrace. Karoline sinks into it, the scent of his cologne grounding her, then scoops up their son, pressing a kiss to his forehead as he coos in her arms. "Mommy made a promise today," she murmurs, her voice soft but resolute, "that justice is worth fighting for. For you. For everyone." Her husband rests a hand on her shoulder, his gaze steady. "I saw it all on the news. You were incredible out there," he says, and she chuckles, a rare lightness breaking through her usual intensity. "It wasn't just me," she replies, settling onto the couch with their son nestled against her chest. "Emily, the FBI, even the people in that courtroom, they all played a part. One person can spark the fight, but it takes a community to win it." The words carry a weight beyond the day's victory, a lesson forged in the heat of the trial. Truth isn't a solitary pursuit. It thrives when voices unite, when courage ripples outward. She glances at her husband, then at their son, his tiny fingers curling around hers. "Today wasn't just about beating Grayson," she continues, her tone reflective. "It was about showing our boy that standing up matters, that justice isn't a gift. It's something we build together." The room falls quiet. The only sound, the baby's soft breathing, and Karoline leans back, her mind already turning to the battles ahead, knowing this win is only the beginning of a larger reckoning. Unlike other tales of lone heroes, this story shines a light on the power of unity. Karoline didn't topple Grayson alone. She leaned on Emily's bravery, the FBI's resolve, and the courtroom's collective will. It's a new takeaway, a practical truth for a fractured 2025 America. One voice can ignite change, but it's the chorus that brings it home. As the evening deepens, Karoline tucks her son into his crib, her husband watching from the doorway, and she feels the day's weight settle into something solid. Hope, perhaps, or a quiet vow to keep pushing. The Horizon Collective's shadow looms, a network of corruption still unexposed, but for now, she savors the victory, a promise kept not just to her family but to a nation watching her every move. So, what do you think the biggest lesson from Karoline's win is, unity or courage? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and hit that subscribe button if you want more stories like this. I've got plenty coming your way. As the echoes of Judge Leonard Grayson's arrest fade into the crisp Boston night, the story of Karoline Leavitt's courtroom triumph ignites a firestorm across the digital landscape, spreading far beyond the courthouse steps. By the evening of March 20, 2025, shaky phone footage of Grayson, his silver hair wild, his wrists bound in gleaming handcuffs as FBI agents lead him away, surges onto X, the clip racking up millions of views within hours under the hashtag #CarolineVsGrayson. The platform buzzes with reactions, a tidal wave of voices amplifying the day's drama. A user from Texas posts, "Karoline's our generation's icon. She took him down without breaking a sweat," while another, from Chicago, taps out a grim question. How many more Graysons are still out there, pulling strings? The video's grainy frames capture every detail. The splintered hard drive scattered across the floor. Emily Hart's tear-streaked defiance. Karoline's steady gaze as she hands over her evidence. And each share fuels the frenzy, retweets piling up like kindling on a bonfire. Amid the storm, Karoline herself steps into the fray, her X account lighting up with a single measured post. "Justice isn't a solo act, it's all of us, together. Thank you for standing with me today." The message strikes a chord, drawing thousands of likes and replies within minutes, one follower writing, "You and Emily showed us what's possible. Keep fighting," as screenshots of her words spread across feeds, a rallying cry for a nation hungry for accountability. The hashtag climbs higher, trending nationwide, and the courtroom clash becomes more than a legal victory. It's a spark, a signal that corruption's days might be numbered, carried forward by a chorus of voices unwilling to let it fade. But this isn't the end. It's a beginning. A crack in a larger wall of secrets still waiting to crumble. The FBI, armed with Karoline's backups and Emily's revelations, has already begun peeling back the layers of the Horizon Collective, the shadowy network that fed Grayson's greed, hinting at a web of influence stretching far beyond one disgraced judge. The fight for justice rolls on, and that's where you come in. This story's too big to stop here. If you're as fired up as I am to see this through, to watch the next dominoes fall, then hit that subscribe button right now. I'm Alex, and I'm committed to digging into every twist of this battle, bringing you the truth as it unfolds side by side. Let's keep pushing, together, until every corner of this mess is exposed. So, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. I want to know who's with me out there. And tell me this. Do you think there are more Graysons hiding in plain sight? Share your take. I'll be reading every single comment, because this isn't just my story, it's ours.